you all haven't even seen the secret. Like, we're not showing anyone the secrets. You got to go see the movie. You see little snippets of it. I can't even.
For decades, Tom Cruise has been the golden boy of Hollywood. The charming smile, the daring stunts, the billion-dollar box office hits. Everything about him screams success. But according to Joe Rogan, there's something far darker behind that polished image. Something Cruise and Hollywood's most powerful forces have tried to bury for years. Rogan didn't mince words. On his podcast, he hinted that Tom Cruise lives a life so carefully managed, so meticulously constructed, that the man the world thinks they know might not even exist. He claimed that Cruise's real life, the one hidden from cameras, reporters, and even co-stars, is filled with secrets so strange, so tightly guarded, that exposing them could shake the very foundations of Hollywood. Think about it. For over 40 years, Tom Cruise has been one of the most recognizable faces on Earth. Yet, how much do we really know about him? His marriages ended mysteriously, his connections with powerful organizations were shielded from scrutiny, and every personal scandal that could have destroyed another star seemed to vanish without a trace. Joe Rogan suggested that it wasn't just luck, it was control, a system designed to protect Cruise at all costs, while also hiding who he truly is. And if the whispers Rogan referenced are true, then the actor we see on the big screen is only a mask. This isn't about his movies. This is about a secret life Hollywood never wanted the world to see. And once you start connecting, before Tom Cruise became the face of Hollywood perfection, he was just a boy named Thomas Cruise Mapother IV, born in 1962-inch Syracuse, New York. His childhood was anything but glamorous. Behind the clean-cut image the world would later know, there was chaos, an unstable family life, poverty, and a father who left deep scars on him. Cruise himself has described his father as a bully and a coward. He recalled moments when, as a small child, he watched his father explode in rage, unleashing violence that left the household trembling. For a boy with big dreams, this wasn't just frightening, it was formative. Tom learned early that trust could be dangerous, that even the people closest to you could turn against you. That lesson would follow him for life. His family moved constantly. By the time he was a teenager, Cruise had attended more than a dozen different schools. Each move meant starting over, never fully belonging, and always feeling like an outsider. Classmates remembered him as small, restless, and eager to prove himself. Struggling with dyslexia, he couldn't read well, and often felt humiliated in classrooms. Teachers labeled him slow, not realizing he was battling an invisible challenge that made every page feel like a wall he couldn't climb. But if words betrayed him, performance saved him. Young Tom discovered early that he had a gift for physical expression. He'd throw himself into school plays, channeling his energy into becoming someone else, someone who wasn't powerless. Acting became more than a hobby. It was an escape, a mask, and eventually, a lifeline. There was also discipline. For a brief period, Cruise even studied at a Franciscan seminary, considering a path toward priesthood. Religion offered structure, a sense of belonging he lacked at home. But deep down, he was drawn to performance, to the stage, and to the idea of becoming larger than life. The stage gave him control, something his chaotic childhood had stolen. It's important to understand this fractured beginning because it shaped everything that followed. The smiling movie star, the daredevil hanging off skyscrapers, the man Joe Rogan claimed was hiding an entirely separate life. He all started as a boy, desperate to escape the violence of his home and the shame of his own struggles. When Tom Cruise finally broke free from that childhood, he wasn't just chasing fame, he was chasing power. Power over his story, power over his image, and power over the world that had once made him feel so small. And that hunger would push him all the way to the top. When Tom Cruise arrived in New York as a teenager, he didn't carry much more than ambition. He had no safety net, no powerful family connections, only the raw determination to prove that he was meant for something greater. Like so many others, he started with rejection after rejection, casting calls that went nowhere, nights spent crashing on couches and scraping by. But unlike most, he refused to bend. His break came in 1981 with a small role in the film Endless Love. It wasn't much, but it was enough to put him in front of the right people. Soon after, he landed a part in Taps, where his intensity caught the attention of Hollywood insiders. Directors saw something different in Cruise, a fire in his eyes, a conviction that made every scene feel urgent. That conviction exploded into stardom in 1983. At just 21, Cruise slid across the floor in his socks and shirt in Risky Business, and suddenly the world knew his name. The film wasn't just a hit, it cemented him as a rising star, a young actor who embodied charisma, confidence, and a dangerous edge. By the time Top Gun premiered in 1986, Cruise was no longer just a star, he was a phenomenon. Maverick, the fearless Navy pilot, became an icon of American cinema, and Cruise was catapulted into international superstardom. Money, fame, and power followed quickly. In Fens also. With Rain Man in 1988, Born on the 4th of July in 1989, and an unbroken string of box office successes through the 92nd, Cruise became more than an actor, he was the face of Hollywood itself. He commanded the screen, and soon he commanded the industry. Studio heads built entire franchises around him. Fans around the world worshipped him. But beneath the glow of his meteoric rise, cracks were already forming. Cruise's obsession with control over his performances, over his public image, even over his personal relationships, was not just ambition, it was survival. He had built his career on discipline, but that discipline was rooted in fear. Fear of weakness, fear of vulnerability, fear of ever being that powerless boy again. And while the world celebrated his daring stunts and seemingly perfect life, Tom Cruise was already constructing something else, a hidden structure behind the curtain. The beginning of the secret life Joe Rogan would one day hint at, a life separate from the flashing cameras, carefully managed by powerful forces that made sure his image never cracked. Cruise had conquered Hollywood, but the higher he climbed, the more he needed to protect the mask, and the truth lurking behind it was darker than anyone imagined. By the mid-1992nd, Tom Cruise wasn't just a star, he was untouchable. But the higher his image soared, the more secrets had to be protected. And this is where Joe Rogan's words cut deep. Tom Cruise doesn't live the life people think he does. Hollywood painted Cruise as a fearless daredevil, the charming leading man who risked everything for authenticity on screen. But off-screen, his life was tightly guarded by invisible walls. His marriages became part of the mystery. His union with Nicole Kidman was celebrated as a Hollywood love story, but its sudden collapse left questions unanswered. Insiders whispered about manipulation, about forces around Cruise that demanded loyalty and control, and about how even Kidman seemed blindsided when their relationship ended overnight. Then came the connection that truly fueled speculation. Cruise's deep involvement with the Church of Scientology. To the public, it looked like faith. To critics, it looked like a machine, one that elevated Cruise as its poster boy while shielding him from scandal. Former insiders claimed the organization managed his relationships, his image, even the narrative of his personal life. Every time a damaging story surfaced, it disappeared just as quickly. Coincidence? Or control? Joe Rogan's commentary hinted at exactly this, that Cruise's world is a stage far more carefully scripted than any movie he's ever made. Hollywood may have protected his films, but Scientology, critics argue, protected his life. And the cost of that protection was isolation, friends who distanced themselves, marriages that crumbled, rumors that he could never fully live outside the carefully constructed bubble around him. The scandals that did break through only made the cracks clearer. In 2005, Cruise's infamous couch-jumping moment on Oprah turned into a cultural spectacle. What should have been an expression of joy became a meme, an image of a star who seemed unhinged. The press piled on, calling him erratic, obsessive, and disconnected from reality. Behind closed doors, things were darker. Former colleagues described him as increasingly controlling, even paranoid. The need to maintain his spotless image, to prove his loyalty to the structures around him, came at the expense of genuine connection. Every friendship, every marriage, every public word felt staged. The real Tom Cruise was disappearing behind layers of performance. And this is what Rogan implied: Hollywood didn't just hide Cruise's secrets, it actively participated in constructing a version of him the world could worship. But the cracks couldn't be sealed forever. For every billion-dollar franchise, there was a shadow of a man losing touch with reality. For every dazzling stunt, there was, at the peak of his power, Tom Cruise seemed unstoppable. Mission impossible after mission. Impossible broke box office records. He hung off airplanes, scaled skyscrapers, and convinced the world he was invincible. But behind that breathtaking image, the cost of his hidden life was becoming undeniable. Joe Rogan's words sting because they touch on a truth Hollywood rarely admits. Cruise's triumphs came at the expense of his humanity. By the late 2002, his private world was collapsing even as his films succeeded. His marriage to Katie Holmes ended abruptly in 2012, and the way it happened only fueled darker speculation. Insiders suggested Holmes had to plan her exit in secret, afraid of the forces surrounding Cruise. Overnight, their daughter, Suri, became estranged from him, a wound that still casts a shadow over his life. This was the tragedy that no blockbuster could erase, the image of a man who could save the world on screen, yet couldn't hold on to the people he loved off-screen. To the public, Cruise smiled and pressed on. To those who looked closer, the smile was a mask, one that hid a growing emptiness. And while Hollywood continued to shield him, the cracks grew sharper. Former Scientology members came forward with damning accounts. They described Cruise as both its greatest weapon and its greatest prisoner, a man trapped in a structure that dictated his every move. Some even claimed that his closest relationships were orchestrated, his personal freedom sacrificed for loyalty. The tragedy of Tom Cruise isn't a dramatic downfall splashed across headlines. It's quieter, more haunting. It's the image of an actor who gave everything to control his destiny, only to lose control of the life that mattered most. He could risk his body dangling from planes, but the true danger was the prison. He couldn't see the secret life that kept him from being free. And that's what Rogan was really pointing at. The climax of Cruise's story isn't in his films, it's in the haunt. For over 4 decades, Tom Cruise has been the embodiment of Hollywood itself, an icon of perfection, discipline, and spectacle. His films are woven into the fabric of modern cinema, inspiring generations with their daring stunts and unrelenting energy. On screen, he is immortal. But off-screen, the picture is more complicated. The boy who grew up in chaos, who built his life on control, may have sacrificed his freedom for the very image that made him untouchable. Joe Rogan's words echo because they force us to ask, do we really know Tom Cruise, or do we only know the version Hollywood allows us to see? In the end, his legacy is both inspiring and unsettling. He represents ambition at its highest peak, proof that discipline can defy gravity, both literally and figuratively. But he also represents the cost of living behind a mask, of letting power and secrecy dictate a life. Perhaps that's the tragedy. The world loved Maverick, Ethan Hunt, and all the heroes he created. But the real Tom Cruise, the man behind the billion-dollar smile, remains a mystery. And maybe that's the lesson Hollywood never wanted us to see, that behind every perfect image lies a human being, fragile and flawed, desperately trying to be free.